panel. You said a lot of very interesting things there, Sarah, of course. I wanted to first start, let's start at Facebook. Facebook is a fascinating video site. AutoStart was a revelation to that site. It rocketed to #2. Really not that far behind YouTube at all now.
Yeah.
But what has it done to engagement in the videos?
Yeah, it's a really good point, and this is where the content has to be. This is where the content has to be strong, and where it's changing the way that content makers create content. Because if you're creating for Facebook, you need to think really carefully about the first couple of seconds, and you need to think really carefully about how to create for audio off. And this is where bridging the content stack and the technology stack becomes so key, because the kind of content that you'll create for, come join us.
Please, please.
Hey, hiya. The kind of content that you create for YouTube and for a more long-form experience may well be very different from what you'll do for Facebook. It also comes down to the value of a view. And we see this with advertisers. They have different goals. And there are awareness goals where you might just want to, it's about reach, and then you have engagement goals. So for stronger engagement, we would always say, get the content right. The more user-initiated it is, the better. So of all our formats that we have, and we have in-stream, skippable in-stream, which is like YouTube TrueView. We have our in-feed, which is very similar to the Facebook. And then we have in-page, user-initiated. The engagement levels are strongest by far on the user-initiated in-page.
Really? Yeah. So in other words, yes, it's got the views up, but it probably hasn't helped engagement at all with the video now.
Well, where it does help is when the content is strong in the first couple of seconds and it gets shared, because we see share rates 5x on Facebook what we see on YouTube. So content is getting a lot more shared on Facebook if you can get people's attention, but it's capturing the attention in the first critical couple of seconds that's key.
Yeah, yeah. James, I want to switch to you because one of the things that AOL is so superb at is syndication. Mm-hmm. How does engagement factor into the platforms that you look to syndicate through? And just talk about that syndication process. And maybe you should just briefly introduce yourself.
Yes, I'll introduce myself. So I work for AOL. I discovered the other day, actually, we're the oldest brand on the internet. I think we're 30 years old this year. So probably everybody in the room knows the brand and thinks we do something completely different to what we actually do. I mean, today as a brand, we work in two areas. We work in creations. We talk about culture and content. But you're right, we also have a huge size of the business around what we call code, which is technology and distribution. So we distribute into 148 countries, and we distribute across 16 different devices or platforms. So to your question, I think the way we approach that is to make sure that it works on any device, because ultimately, to Sarah's point earlier, millennials, they jump from device to device. So if you just build something for mobile, then you miss a massive opportunity, especially with things like AirPlay, where people will be watching on a mobile and then suddenly switch it to a large screen. So our whole approach is to build content that, again, to Sarah's point, is emotionally engaging, and therefore that should translate from device to device. And I think we work with 140,000 publishers worldwide. And again, with those publishers,
140,000.
It's quite a scary fact, but we provide a huge amount of the plumbing, which Sarah showed earlier, is driven by AOL these days.
And so what's a qualification for a platform? You decide you're gonna syndicate through a platform. What qualified it as valid platform for you?
Well, I think it's less about starting with the device or the platform. It's starting with the great content, identifying the partner, and then.
So I meant content partners, websites, etc.
Yeah, so again, I mean, we're very focused on premium, so we believe that, the real future for brands is the premium environment. I mean, YouTube do a great job, but they have a huge amount of user-generated content, and for us, it's about finding places for brands that isn't about cats on skateboards. I would love to eradicate the internet of cats, I totally agree with that. So it's about finding those quality environments, those quality audiences, and then building the programming, building the content that matches to those.
So I think AOL's reinvention as a media company is a pretty amazing story. I think Red Bull, Bernhard, your story is even more amazing, which is to go from a beverage company to the multimedia powerhouse, or one of the biggest multimedia powerhouses online. So talk about how you executed that strategy and how the two work together. And does Red Bull view itself as a media company or a beverage company today?
Well, thanks for having me here, first of all. And
please introduce yourself and your
no,
role.
no worries. No, it's company's more important than me here. So answer the last question first. I think we're both. We aim to be both. We're more than that. Even Red Bull, in between of becoming a media company, has also become an event organizer. And in fact, it's being referred to as the biggest event organizer in the world. So the biggest audiences that are drawn to sites in total, more than any sports company, more than maybe not more than the Chinese Communist Party, but it's getting there. It's really the business, how it emerged, and that's the little story of our founder who built Red Bull in 1987, and he was competing with big brands like, in beverages, Coca-Cola and Pepsi, and he did not have the budget, so he had to kind of invent what is now referred to as below-the-line marketing. And what he did was he initiated media production on a very high quality level, so when a skateboarder was filmed in the half pipe, he could take the tape at that time, right, and offer it for broadcast and say, you got this football afternoon on Saturday, and there's the break, and in the break you can play this 5-minute clip. And this is how it all started. Now, obviously, the digital media in the millennial years helped us a lot to become a lot broader with YouTube and all the rest, and the social media added to this. And in 2007, we decided to create our own business out of this, which is now Red Bull Media House. So within Red Bull Media House, I'm in charge of the global commercial aspect. And well, we've gone as far as now, not only do we produce media, but last year we also started an advertising business. So we now invite third-party brands to promote their brands within our brand environment, which is not a so-branded environment anymore, but it has a lot of content that is not branded, but still lives within this brand ecosphere, which has become a lifestyle environment. It's become a media brand, right? And so this is a little bit the strategy we have there. I think it's quite unique, and yeah, great fun there.
So you're taking advertising from other companies. I mean, do you take advertising from other drink companies as well?
Yeah, we do. We take advertising from other companies, and I showed the Adidas example yesterday. So they ran their winter campaign. It's the Adidas Outdoor division, so snow and winter clothing, and they had an engagement rate, and you will know better, through our channels of about 1.5% click-through rate on YouTube, and it was about 4.6% on the redbull.com from their banners and the video they had behind their banner. And again, the reason why this worked so well, and this is probably like, threefold, tenfold what you would expect on average from a campaign like this, is because we took a lot of care about the native integration, the storytelling, the pictures shown, the quality, and this is, I think what you said is absolutely true, is getting the video right. We know all the mechanisms, we know all the chain. It was very interesting what you've shown, but as you said, if the video is shit, it doesn't work, right? And we're trying to get this thing right, not only for us, it took us a lot of time to get there, but also for the partners we're working with. So we're very selective. We've got another example of a car manufacturer that we worked with that was also quite a good example, but as the video wasn't quite as good as the Adidas video was, and you can all watch this online, Open All Winter is what the campaign's called, the car manufacturer's video had a much lower click-through rate just because of the quality of your video. Same environment, same everything. So that's the key, the storytelling within the video. We always think it's a given, it isn't. And the difference it was the same in classic advertising, in classic 30-second commercials. It was just measured in a different way. So the measurement wasn't as accurate. Now it is. Now we get those engagement rates, which we never got on TV. And now you see the difference, right?
Indeed. And that's a nice transition, because I wanted to bring Ludovic into the conversation here. Ludovic, there is a difference between having that data, analyzing that data, and then getting the targeting right? So can you talk to us a little bit about that? First of all, introduce yourself and let us know where you're from.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm working for Orange Business Services, and especially I'm delivering some analytics solutions, which are sometimes onboarding or not telco data. With regards data, there is a lot of hope and hype with what we can do with data. In theory, we can do a lot of things with data, and the more the customer journey is digitized, the more the telco operators are carrying some data. However, I would like to kill a myth today. Yes, we have a lot of data in our system, in our networks. However, we are not sitting on a gold mine. Why? Simply because of privacy issues. And this is a good news for the end consumer. Usually, we are splitting things into two folders of use case. First one, as you say, is audience measurement. In effect, we are leveraging all the logs we are in our network, in our systems, and so on, to build some aggregated segments. And out of that, we are effectively building some profiles, some behaviors, and so on. But it's totally anonymized. And when I say anonymized, it's not only taking out the identifier and using some individual data, because when you are using an individual data by taking out the identifier, it's still personal data. When I say anonymized data, it's without identifier and after having aggregated the data. So we can extract out of that a lot of good insights, but the challenge is to be able to separate all the insight coming from the household from the insight coming from individuals. And this is where we are combining the big data approach with let's say the legacy panel approach to be able to extract out of the aggregated data some insights coming from the individual. And on the top of that, this is where we are jumping to the audience measurement 3.0. On the top of that, we are combining with these data. We are mixing those data with external data, contextual data, coming from social analytics, coming from weather, coming from any kind of open data. So we can enhance, we can dramatically enhance the measurements. And the second folder is the dynamic targeting. And the dynamic targeting is already existing across the web and mobile, and we are already using cookies and other sign-on, unique sign-on, single sign-on technology to proceed some retargeting. With regards to telco data, we will not provide to the brands any kind of personal data to do so, for two reasons. First of all, for business reasons, because if we want to do so in terms of consent, we need to ask a strong explicit consent, and it's impossible to do business at scale to do so when we do so. And the second reason, simply because we have committed to our customer not to share or sell their personal data to some advertisers unless it is to improve the services we are delivering to our customers.
Okay, thank you. I want to return to one of the core subjects that we have here at the panel, which is the concepts of brands and engagement. I want to ask a very basic question. How important is brand in bringing people and holding them and engaging them in content? Because it seems like millennials, Sarah, you said earlier, that they want to be in control, they want to pick what they want to view. And it sounds almost like they're being like blue jays, picking from here and there and all over the place. how effective is brand at capturing that sort of customer, and how do you think about your brands? Do you bifurcate your brands into sub-brands to attack different markets? So start with you on the millennials.
Okay, so this is a challenge for content makers and more traditional content makers because the kids don't care where the content comes from. There is very little loyalty towards content makers.
Very much so.
Whether it's movie studios, TV broadcasters, musicians, whatever it might be, the content just needs to be kick-ass. That said, there needs to be a sense of affinity with a brand. And the brand can be incredibly powerful, especially if you want to move beyond the piece of content into a longer-term relationship. So and I'm thinking about this in a couple of ways. So the first thing I would always say to advertisers is make sure your brand is in there. Because if your brand's not mentioned, if no one knows who your brand is, it's wasted budget. And you see this with digital video advertising. There's a reluctance to incorporate brand. But if the brand is incorporated well as part of the story, as the hero of the story or the facilitator of the story, then that can be incredibly powerful. If and only if the brand is authentic. So I think brand authenticity is absolutely crucial. And then you don't need to be afraid. And Red Bull have really nailed this. So they are themselves. You're exhilarating. You're energetic. And the videos that you create are all about that energy and that exhilaration. So there's no reason to be ashamed of being Red Bull and the brand. It's part of who you are and what makes you awesome. So I think we'll see lots more brands following in that direction.
Yeah, I mean,
James.
I would completely agree. I mean, I think the problem we often have is, we assume we don't want to put a brand in front of somebody, but we did some research and we found that I think more than 80% of people said if it's great content, we don't care how brands produced it. In fact, we like the brand for producing it. I think for me, it's the hierarchy of, I genuinely believe that all behavior in digital, any platform is driven by needs. So if you think about content which plays to those emotive needs, that emotion that people have, which I think is what Red Bull do really well, then you think about how do you distribute it to devices and platforms. That's what makes a brand successful. I think too many brands charge into, we better do something for a mobile phone because millennials have mobile phones. To illustrate my point, I don't know if anybody saw the famous picture that CNN had of when the Pope was put in 2013. And there was one from 2005. Now, every conference I ever go to, people put that up and say, oh, look, the world's gone mobile, we need to be mobile. For me, the really interesting thing is what's actually not changed enough is nothing, right? Because people are there for religion. Religion is a need, a motivation. So if you start to think like that as a brand, then I think you start to get to content experiences that really work, and therefore millennials will engage with your brand if you behave like that.
But particularly with AOL, for example, you've done a great job of building up personalities like Nicole Richie, which I think Nicole Richie, the way AOL arrived at her was she was so popular in social media, and you built a show around her. Talk a little bit about that side of branding. It's the individuals, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's interesting. A lot of our talent is talent which is really strong in social. So a lot of those 140,000 people, publishers, if you want to call them that, a lot of those guys are actually very strong in social because I think for me it's not about the view, it's about the sharing. I think there's an interesting currency out there where brands obsess with how many views can I get on YouTube. For me, that's total bullshit. It's irrelevant. It's the shareability. It's how much do people engage with that. So when we're picking talent, we pick talent that we know is going to be very shareable. And also, talent that is, again, going to the premium side. It's about having premium people involved.
Indeed. Bernhard, you have such a strong brand. Is that carrying people, bringing people to the content, or are you subdividing that brand now and looking for personalities to engage?
It's absolutely the pillar of our what we're doing in the digital media. It's bringing people there, and I think millennials and so many others like me also they reject control, yes, but does it mean that they don't need guidance? I think they still need guidance, and brands provide guidance. They help to provide guidance, right? They tell people what they can expect, and I think this is also because. Guidance can come from brands, they can come from references. This is a big difference between YouTube and Facebook, I think, as you brought up the example, which is really interesting, because YouTube does provide very little guidance, only references and recommendations that sometimes are good, sometimes aren't, are rubbish, right? And so in Facebook, you always know who you got this from, right? This is a much stronger element of guidance, and again, the brand can also be that kind of guidance. On Facebook, we are currently the second, third biggest brand, depending globally. The most talked about, the most engaged with on Facebook, and that tells you how the things find each other and how a brand can live on Facebook. So absolutely, the brand is in the very center of everything we do. However, doesn't mean that we only bet on that brand only, because we do stand for sports, and for many people we still stand for action sports only, although we are engaged in 130 different sports right now. But again, we also do other things but sports, and it's hard to expand the brand reach beyond what you're known for and retain credibility. So we're trying this right now. Our content production already has a very strong share of non-sports content. In the next 2 years, the majority of content will be non-sports, so we're getting there. But in parallel, we also build 2 other content brands. One is Terra Mata, which stands for nature and science content, and the other one is Servus, which stands for traditional inspirational content out of our home, the Alps region. And so because we know we will never take the Red Bull, and don't even want to take the Red Bull brand into those areas. Wouldn't make sense, right? So build new brands in parallel that probably at some point will have the same strength and guidance that the Red Bull brand has in that endemic area it is.
So I'm glad you brought up social media. Social media, I think, is, to me, it is the defining difference between traditional television entertainment and online entertainment, perhaps outside of SVOD, right? Maybe we should set that aside, because that's, in my mind, that's still television. Talk about the role of social media in the experience now of video online. Who wants to pitch in first? Go for it,
I was just going to say, I mean, in terms of our content distribution of our own platforms, social is incredibly important. Again, when you've got great content, I mean, a fact you probably wouldn't know about Huffington Post, which is one of our brands, and you probably wouldn't even know it's one of our brands, is we're the most socially shared platform globally. We have 127 million pieces of content get shared. And that's because, it's about that content, as you say, the endorsement from people that you know. They push that out there. So we're building our content out specifically now with that in mind. The ability to put 2 minutes of news and put it into a news feed. And that is a really powerful thing. And I think that drives more traffic than our traditional platforms.
Absolutely. And to echo that, so within the player itself, you can incorporate social. So we have a social feed feature, and any brands that are interested in what's going on social and what people are saying about it can incorporate that into the video itself. And then when viewers see that video, they don't just see the video, they see the conversation that's going on as well. And they don't just want to be a consumer of video, they want to be part of a conversation. And I think you see this taken even more to an extreme with Vine stars, with YouTube creators, where the conversation doesn't just happen about the video, but happens with the content creators. And it happens in the comments section, and where viewers will make suggestions for future shows, and then the content creator will say, yep, great, well, I'm coming to a supermarket near you soon, so why don't we meet up in person? So this whole kind of relatability and being part of a conversation, I think, yes, it's happening on social media, and that's where it's most visible, that's where it's most scaled, but it's also happening one-one with narrowcast sharing, and it's also happening IRL in real life.
You can sort of take this to the extreme with Twitch channels, for example, where you literally have a one-on-one relationship with the content creator because they're broadcasting a game to you and you're interacting with them while you're watching them play the game. But in more traditional video, on Red Bull, are the people that the sports personalities, the people that are in the X game type content? How do you draw that into the experience, or is that something that sort of sits aside from it?
From the social media?
From the video experience itself, how does that social relationship with the people in the videos, does that?
There's a complete integration. The reason why we are where we are on Facebook is because we've been working on this integration actually with quite a high number of people behind this, a large social media team that is working on this to get this integration right, and to stay credible, to keep people interacting, right, to bring in the personality at the right point in time, etc., right? So this has become an art of its own, right, which I don't entirely understand, right, but it's working. That's the most important thing. it says monetization here. That's a different question, right? Lots of engagement, very little monetization. That has to be said as well. And one thing, as you mentioned, and that's, I think, an interesting question. As you mentioned SVOD, and you want to fade this out for here, but I think in the traditional TV world, there was always a distinction between free TV, the mainstream channels, and premium pay TV. I think if we talk about SVOD, if we talk about Netflix, it's the representation of premium pay TV in the digital world. But what's the representation of free TV? To some extent, we see that this is happening on YouTube. It's now, there's a little bit of a shift, obviously, into Facebook, but it's all short formats, and that's interesting. Where do we put our long format content in the future? I mean, America's Home Video was a TV show, still is, but it goes into digital as a fragmented set of clips, right? Where's the long format? Where's the long format storytelling? Where will that have a home? It has no home yet. It has no home on Facebook. It has no home on YouTube. Right. And that would be, I think that's the interesting next steps because people right now, if you talk about second screen, also talks about the multi-screen engagement here. Second screen doesn't really work, if we're honest. I mean, we're talking second screen, we pretend people are interacting on the app of that particular show, which they aren't. They are twittering or something, and even that is working only to a very varying extent, country by country. So where I come from, German-speaking countries, it's not working at all, right? No one does it. So it will be interesting to see when the long-format video that runs on the big screen right now, and people are twittering on their mobile phones, will be on one screen, and people really watch it there, and there will be this true integration. And the video that starts in Facebook right now, which is the funniest home video or something, or the cats, right, will be a real TV show, and people will be really interacting with that on one platform, right? There is no break-off media anymore. I think that's the next interesting question where TV is, and that's going to be then the representation of free TV and digital, I think.
Ludovic, the right place for long form, still the television? Is that the right place for it?
Definitely, I think the television it's at the center of the customer journey. Definitely, through all the contents TV is distributing across the channels, obviously, and there is I think there is for the TV broadcaster a huge challenge to improve the quality of measurement and to get closer to what we are doing on the digital. And by the way, we have just launched a partnership with TF1, which is one of the European media group in Europe, to around the concept of single source. The single source it's the holy dream of the marketers for 50 years now, and this is the capability of measuring all the touch points between a brand and its consumer, from the media exposure to the word of mouth. Going through the purchase, the product usage, and so on. So this is where we're going to experiment this 3.0 measurement, combining data coming from a panel of Orange customers, which are opt-in, with the data coming from geolocation, data coming from geolocation outside and inside the stores. With data coming from weather, social, data coming from ad spending monitoring, and all that to measure some correlation and build a model around the single source. And this is a proof of concept which will launch in the coming months, and the first results will come, let's say, by the end of 2016.
Cool, very good. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to throw it open to you for your questions. Back to the monetization issue. One of the things I often try and put myself in the position of is the poor advertiser in this market. How do they figure out which formats, which platforms? In particular, I see tremendous innovation in formats in advertising. But how the heck do you sell that? 5-second ads, interstitials, 30 seconds, bumpers, telescoping. This is a very, very complex world for an advertiser today. But how can you sell these new avails?
you need to know what your goals are. That's always the starting point. If your goals are deep engagement, time spent, action, well, it may not be short form. It's just, I think a lot of the time advertisers jump straight in and just see the new shiny things and think
want to
about
be there.
and want to be there. And that can be great. And actually for some brands, especially if part of your brand identity is being experimental, being an early adopter, then that can work well. But I think always start with what you want to achieve. What are the goals? Is it attention? Is it awareness? Is it action? Is it advocacy? Because whichever of those is will massively change the shape of a media plan.
James?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think I think TV still has a really big role for a lot of brands. And I was on a panel recently where this guy said, TV's dead, TV advertising doesn't work, full stop. I think his village then went and collected him. But, you know, of course it works, right? But it's about the brand. It's about saying, to your point, so what are you trying to do? So at the moment, I'm seeing lots of brands diving into Periscope, right? Very clever piece of technology, but I'm sitting there trying to work out, okay, what are they actually trying to achieve, right? They're just jumping into it because, oh, it's Periscope, it's new, it's trendy, let's get in there. What they should be doing is saying, right, let's step back and let's think about what we're trying to achieve here. So for me, I think a lot of it is about simplification. And again, if you go back to what we talked about previously, about understand why somebody would engage with that, why somebody would engage with your brand, that helps you simplify in terms of what does the content look like, how long is the content, what are the platforms, rather than just suddenly saying, got all these formats, better panic, let's try them all, which doesn't work. I mean, I worked with a large beverage company, not Red Bull, for a long time in my agency life. And what we discovered is that actually, again, television was driving a huge amount of what was happening. So at one point, they pulled away heavily from television, and they saw a decline in business. They went back to television. They put 70% into what we call core media, and then 20% into innovating around those media, into digital, and 10% into the crazy stuff. And suddenly the business went back to where it should be.
Right, but can that still work in linear online? Can you still get the benefits?
Yeah, I mean, I genuinely believe, because I think, you know, again, it goes back to the consumer. I think, you know, the consumer, I mean, if you think about screens, so, you know, we have all these different screens, but ultimately, if you want to watch a film, you'll always try and default to the best, highest quality screen. You know, if you were going to, say, the James Bond premiere, you wouldn't watch it on a mobile, you'd go and watch it in a cinema.
Yeah.
So I think, you know, that's an interesting thing to think about. If you're looking for entertainment, if you're trying to be engaged with consumers, ultimately, then the larger the screen you can get to. We don't live in a perfect world, which is why we have all these formats.
Bernhard, can a 5-second video ad really work?
I think it can, yeah, absolutely. And it's not so much a matter of formats. We're trying to reduce this format. So same here, simplicity. We don't offer more than 5-6 formats currently, and we're trying to focus on what I said in my opening statements: